Hello everyone and welcome back to Blockbuster Reviews. So ladies and gentlemen, this week we're going to be looking at a movie called Wish. Wish is the 62nd animation that has been released by Disney, and it has come out in celebration of 100 years of Disney. Wish has been in production since 2018 and finally came out in 2023. It was released on the November 22nd, and in this video we're going to be looking at whether or not this movie is worth watching, what the financials look like, and what the general opinion of the public is about this movie. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. Okay, this is the poster of Wish, and this is basically the origin story of the wishing star. If you see Disney movies, first of all, before any Disney movie begins, you're going to see that there is a palace that appears and has Walt Disney written underneath it, and there's always a star that goes over the palace. And it's basically the story of that star. The star is known as the wishing star. It has been referenced in a lot of different Disney animations. And it's basically about how you wish upon a star and then your dream comes true, or you granted your wish and then things start changing. Your fortunes change completely when you granted your wish by that star. So this story is about where that star comes from, where the whole concept of wishing comes from. And it's basically a very important movie because it sets the story and the stage for all of the other animations to come, which reference the wishing star. This is the cast of this movie. There are two prominent people who have been in this. There are other people, obviously, there's an entire team of cast, but there are two very, very prominent people who have come into this movie. First is Ariana DeBose. Ariana DeBose rose to fame when she came in the West Side Story, and she was handpicked by Steven Spielberg. She got an Oscar for the Best Supporting Actor for her role in the West Side Story, and ever since she has risen to fame, and she has other movies coming out also. Apart from Ariana DeBose, we have Chris Pine. We all know who Chris Pine is, and he is playing a negative role in this movie. He plays King Magnifico, and both of these actors have sung their own songs. So this table shows us how the movie has fared in the box office. We have so it shows in 2023, which was released, and in the domestic box office it made $62 million. In the international box office it made $146 million, and bringing the total to $209 million. But how do we know whether these financials are encouraging or discouraging? We know this because the production budget of the movie was $200 million, and the movie has barely scraped over that $200 million mark to $209 million. So it's only $9 million above. Sure, the movie is going to be making more money in merchandising, and it's probably going to be sold off to, it's going to be running on Disney Plus, and it's going to have other avenues for making money. But the domestic and the international box office together, which we call the world box office record, is very, very instructive in telling us how people like the movie. So the public has unfortunately not really liked the movie. The reason for this is that the movie's plot is very confusing. I was gone on a vacation to another city, and I stopped doing everything. I was reading Viola Davis's autobiography. I stopped reading that. I took the car. I went to the mall, and I bought tickets. I waited for hours in line to watch this movie in 3D. And when I did, I was unfortunately very, very disappointed. I speak for myself here. I found that the plot was very confusing. I know that there are very smart people out there who are going to say what was confusing about the plot, but I found it to be very confusing because they're making this philosophical assumption about people understanding some deeper part of some philosophy that really doesn't really pan out very properly. And you kind of lose interest. Songs are very long. There are too many songs. Only one or two songs are good. The rest of the songs are not that great. The actors have done a fairly good job. They've done their part, but the screenplay and the script is very weak. The jokes are not all that funny. The characterization isn't very, very powerful, and there's no grandeur in that movie. Like you see Frozen, and in the songs and everything, you see this is grandeur, and that's not in this movie. It's just very, very simple. But really, it all boils down to the story. The story, unfortunately, has taken a beating because it's a confusing plot. It doesn't come very easily. I mean, I could not understand the plot with my average IQ. But I'm presuming that a lot of children were probably very confused about this plot as well. If you see other Disney cartoons like, yeah, you see Beauty and the Beast or Bambi or whatever, the plot immediately jumps out. And in this animation, the plot does not jump out. So I would not recommend this movie, unfortunately. But let's see what the financials say, whether or not they're in line with my assessment about the movie. So here we are. This is, sorry, I skipped a slide. This is the table that shows how the movie has fared in the international box office, which we're going to be looking at only the US box office right now. And we're going to see how many different types of movies have fared in comparison to Wish. And we see that Wish is on 1453, number 1453, which means that 1452 movies have made more money than Wish, which is a very discouraging figure, because this is not just a Disney movie, but it's, like I said, an origin story, and that's supposed to be very important even for Disney. So, what's more discouraging is the fact that if you look at the rest of the movies from 1451, 1452, 1454, and 55, you see that all of these movies were released a very long time ago. So The Wolfman was released in 2010, and then you have Down and Out in Beverly Hills, which was released in 1986. That's also a Disney movie. Then you have Wish, which came out 2023, and then you have Alien that came out in 1979, and then you have Mouse Hunt that came out in 1997, sorry. So you have all of these movies that came out decades before this movie, and this Wish is still struggling to make more money than movies that came out 20, 30, 40 years before this movie was released. Now, this chart shows how the movie has done in comparison to the rest of the Disney movies. And it ranks at 219 compared to other Disney movies, which is also a very bad and discouraging figure, because it has the same problem as the chart before. If you look at 2017, 18, 20, and 21, these movies were again released in 2010, 10, 84, and 86. So again, we have the same problem. Two movies were released 13 years ago, and the rest of the two were released almost half a century ago, and it's still struggling in between them. So even amongst Disney movies, not just amongst other movies, but even amongst Disney movies, it has not done very well. It's very unfortunate, but it has not really. So what we're going to do now is we're going to compare this animation with a very famous other animation that came out in 2007 that was called Beowulf. This is the poster for Beowulf. That's Angelina Jolie in there. And just to explain to you how it has done in comparison to another animation that came out almost 15 years before it. Now you have in the first row, you have the record for Beowulf that came out in 2007. It made $82 million at the US box office, so $112 million in the international box office, and that's $195 million in total. We've seen in the second row, we've seen Wish and how it's done, 62 million, 146 million, and $209 million. Now it seems like they're only $20 million apart, and Disney hasn't done all that bad in comparison to this movie. But what we're doing here is that we're going to compare these two movies, with inflation and without inflation. So this chart is without taking inflation into account. Now, if we go down and see, this is what the chart looks like without inflation. So you have the red represents Wish, and the blue line represents Beowulf. And you see Beowulf is dying out at $82 million, and Wish has done only $62 million. But what we're going to notice here, that when we're going to look at the chart that represents the inflation, then the gap between these two lines is going to become significantly more. You see, this is what the gap has now become. And the blue line again represents Beowulf, which has gone much higher, which means that if Beowulf was released today, it would have made $122 million in today's dollar terms. So because it was released in 2007, saying that it made $82 million back then is a false comparison with Wish's $62 million. They're not $20 million apart, they are $42 million apart, because in today's terms, the movie would have made a lot more money. So, all these figures that we saw, these rankings that we saw, they would have dropped down much further if we had taken inflation into account. So, by all standards, from personal experience, from the public's opinion, and from the financials, we've seen that the movie, unfortunately, is very discouraging. It's very sad that the actors have put in their hearts and souls. Unfortunately, the movie was just not able to make its cut. It is not going to be remembered in the hearts and minds of people for a long time to come. And they ought to have been more careful with the movie, because it's an origin story. It sets the tone and the stage for the rest of the movies to come, as I've mentioned before. So, it's one kind of wonders what they did for 5 years that they came out with this very disappointing movie. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This was my review for Wish, and until the next time we see you, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good day.